Darksiders 3. Darksiders 3 is the definition of an underrated AA gem. It doesn't try to compete with the massive budgets of modern AAA games, but what it offers is something raw, fun, and genuinely satisfying. You step into the shoes of Fury, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, in a game that's part hack and slash, part puzzle platformer, and part Souls-like, and somehow it all comes together into something that stands out, especially in an era of bloated open-world AAA games. The combat in Darksiders 3 has a tight, deliberate feel. Instead of button mashing your way through enemies, the game makes you focus on timing your attacks and dodging at the right moment, leaning into a more methodical combat style. It's tough but fair, kind of like a more forgiving version of Dark Souls. Every encounter feels meaningful, and there's a real sense of satisfaction in mastering Fury's arsenal of whip attacks and elemental abilities. Speaking of the world, Darksiders 3 trades in the overly massive, map marker-filled worlds of AAA games for a more compact, handcrafted experience. Every area feels like it was designed with purpose, whether it's an eerie dungeon, a ruined city, or a hidden cave. It's all tied together with a sense of progression that makes exploration satisfying without overwhelming you. The Surge 2. The Surge 2 is a perfect example of how AA games can outshine many of today's bloated AAA titles. It takes the familiar Souls-like formula and cranks it up with a unique sci-fi twist, focusing on brutal melee combat, tactical dismemberment, and deep customization. It doesn't try to be the flashiest game out there, it just sticks to what it does best, delivering a challenging, addictive experience without all the unnecessary fluff. The combat is where the Surge 2 really shines. It's fast, intense, and rewards precision. But what sets it apart from other Souls-likes is the targeting system. You don't just hack away at enemies, you aim for specific body parts. If you focus on armored limbs, you'll have a tough time, but if you target weaker spots, you can bring enemies down quicker. Even better. Chopping off limbs rewards you with blueprints and parts to craft better gear. Every fight feels like a puzzle. Do you go for a quick takedown or aim for that piece of armor you've been eyeing? The customization in the Surge 2 is top tier. You can build your character however you like, go heavy with powerful, slow strikes, or focus on speed and agility with dual weapons. The game throws a ton of weapons, armor, and implants at you, letting you experiment with different builds until you find what clicks. Every new piece of gear feels earned, and tweaking your loadout before heading into a tough fight is just as satisfying as the battles themselves. The setting is a refreshing change from the usual fantasy fare you see in this genre. Instead of dark castles and haunted forests, you're navigating Jericho City, a futuristic dystopia filled with deranged robots, rogue security forces, and nano-infected creatures. The city feels alive, with interconnected areas that reward exploration and plenty of secrets tucked away for those willing to look. It's not an overwhelming open world, it's compact, dense, and designed to pull you deeper into its atmosphere. The story is there if you want it, but it doesn't get in your way. You wake up in a crumbling city with only fragments of what happened before. There's a mystery to uncover, but the Surge 2 is more about the journey than the narrative. NPCs and data logs fill in the gaps, giving the world a sense of history, but the real thrill is in mastering its combat and overcoming the challenges it throws at you. A Plague Tale Requiem. A Plague Tale Requiem is proof that a focused, narrative-driven AA game can outshine a lot of flashy AAA titles. This sequel builds on everything that made A Plague Tale Innocence special, delivering an emotional, intense, and visually stunning experience. It follows the journey of Amisha and her younger brother Hugo as they try to escape the horrors of the Black Death, this time on an even bigger scale. The game's storytelling is a masterclass in pacing and character development. Amisha's struggle to protect Hugo while dealing with her own trauma makes for a gripping narrative that keeps you hooked from start to finish. The relationship between the siblings feels raw and real. Amisha isn't some perfect hero, she's just doing her best in an impossible situation, and Hugo's condition, tied to his mysterious connection with the plague-bearing rats, adds a layer of tension to every moment. The stealth gameplay is deeper this time around. Amisha has new tools and abilities, and she's far more capable in combat, though it's still not about charging headfirst into enemies. You need to pick your moments, sneak through heavily guarded areas, and use your environment to outsmart enemies. Whether it's distracting guards with thrown objects, extinguishing their torches to unleash a swarm of rats, or setting traps, every encounter feels like a puzzle you need to solve under pressure. And those rats? Yeah, they're back in terrifying numbers. The sheer scale of the rat swarms in Requiem is wild. They move like a wave of darkness, devouring everything in their path. There are moments where the only thing between you and death is a small circle of light, and it's both thrilling and nerve-wracking. These sequences keep you on the edge of your seat, forcing you to think fast and stay one step ahead of danger.
I don't know what's happening to me, Lucas.
Vampyr. Vampyr is one of those games that sneaks up on you. It's not perfect, but if you vibe with it, man, it'll hook you in. You play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, a doctor turned vampire trying to survive in a plague-ridden London. It's a weird mix balancing the Hippocratic Oath with the urge to drain people dry, but that's what makes it so interesting. The game isn't just about flashy combat, it's about choices, morality, and consequences that can get real heavy. The coolest part of Vampyr is how it puts you in tough situations. Everyone you meet has a story: shopkeepers, nurses, homeless people, and you're always faced with this dilemma: do you help them or do you feed on them? Feeding gives you massive XP, making you way stronger, but it also comes with consequences. Kill too many people and entire districts fall apart, spiraling into chaos. But if you resist, the game becomes much harder. It's this constant push and pull. Do you stay true to your human side or give in to your vampire instincts? Combat is solid, but it's not the main focus. You've got melee weapons, vampire abilities, and guns, but it's all about managing your stamina and blood levels. Some fights are intense, especially when you're dealing with multiple enemies or vampire hunters, but it's not an action-heavy game like Devil May Cry or Bloodborne. It's more about survival and picking your battles carefully. When you do unleash your vampire powers, whether it's a shadowy dash or draining an enemy mid-fight, it feels so satisfying. What really makes Vampyr stand out is the atmosphere. London is gloomy, rainy, and downright eerie, with dark alleyways and plague victims coughing around every corner. The soundtrack is haunting, adding to the feeling that something bad could happen at any moment. It's the perfect setting for a game about vampires. It feels alive but also decaying, just like Jonathan himself. The story is engaging, especially if you like dialogue-heavy games. You'll spend a lot of time talking to characters, digging into their backstories, and figuring out how they fit into the bigger picture. There's also a detective element. You're piecing together clues about your patients and trying to find ways to heal them without giving in to your thirst. It's slow-paced, but it works if you're into narrative-driven games where your decisions really matter.
It is the curse of the goddess. It is the hunger in you, the need for blood.
Death's Door. Man, Death's Door really caught me off guard. I went in expecting a cute little indie game, and next thing I know, I'm completely hooked. You play as a tiny crow with a sword, out there reaping souls like it's just another day at the office. But it's not long before things go off the rails. Your next target disappears, and suddenly you're unraveling this weird, beautiful world full of secrets, lost souls, and crazy bosses. The vibe of this game is something else. It's got this melancholic charm, like, yeah, the whole thing revolves around death, but it's oddly hopeful too. And the characters? They're quirky in the best way. One minute, you're talking to a bard who's writing terrible songs about your adventures, and the next, you're in a weirdly touching conversation with a gravekeeper who just wants to be remembered. It's got a humor that sneaks up on you, and those little moments hit harder than you'd expect. One thing I really love about Death's Door is how it handles exploration. It's not this huge open world full of pointless checklists. It's compact, focused, and rewards curiosity. You unlock new abilities that make you think, wait, didn't I see something back there? And before you know it, you're backtracking, finding hidden areas and upgrades you didn't even know existed. There's something so satisfying about those little moments when you realize you can finally reach a place that was just out of reach earlier. And let's talk about the music for a second. It's beautiful. Seriously, the soundtrack pulls you into the world, setting the mood without ever being overbearing. Whether you're wandering through eerie ruins or squaring off against a massive boss, the music always hits just right. This isn't some massive over-the-top experience, it's short, sweet, and it knows exactly what it wants to be. If you're tired of modern games bloated with side content and endless grind, Death's Door is the perfect break. It's the kind of game that feels like it respects your time, no fluff, just pure fun and heart. Shadow Warrior 2. Alright, Shadow Warrior 2 doesn't hold back. It's loud, fast, and absolutely ridiculous in the best way possible. If you're in the mood for a game that throws subtlety out the window and just lets you slice, shoot, and blow everything to bits, this one's got you covered. You play as Lo Wang, a mercenary with a sword, a ton of guns, and absolutely no filter. The story, it's there, sure, but honestly this game is all about having fun. The combat is where Shadow Warrior 2 really shines. You're not just shooting though, yeah there's plenty of that, you're also slicing enemies into pieces with a katana that feels way too satisfying to use. The game lets you switch between firearms and melee weapons on the fly, and the flow of combat is just perfect. One second you're blasting enemies with shotguns, the next you're cutting through a mob of demons with precision slashes, and it never gets old, because the game throws so many weapons at you: chainsaws, plasma rifles, crossbows. If it can kill something, it's probably in the game. The world is split into open, semi-randomized levels that give you a lot of freedom to roam around, find side quests, and explore hidden areas. It's not fully open world, but it doesn't feel as linear as the first game. And the environment's gorgeous. One minute you're slicing demons in a cyberpunk city, the next you're fighting through a lush forest, all with this surreal vibe that makes you feel like you're in some twisted fever dream. Oh, and let's not forget the humor, because Shadow Warrior 2 is packed with it. Lo Wang doesn't take anything seriously, and the dialogue is full of over-the-top one-liners and goofy banter. Not all the jokes land, but it leans so hard into being ridiculous that you can't help but laugh along with it. It's the kind of game where the protagonist delivers bad puns while mowing down hordes of enemies, and it's all the better for it. Still Wakes the Deep. Still Wakes the Deep looks like it's going to be one of those games that grabs you by the nerves and doesn't let go. Imagine being stuck on an offshore oil rig during a massive storm, cut off from the outside world, and oh yeah, something really messed up is happening around you. This isn't just another horror game, it's all about atmosphere, tension, and survival. It's not about throwing cheap jump scares at you, but rather making you feel every second of that isolation and fear. The thing about Still Wakes the Deep is that it seems to focus more on storytelling and immersion than combat. Don't expect a gun or a way to fight back. You'll be running, hiding, and figuring out how to survive while things fall apart around you. Games like this aren't about power, they're about vulnerability, and from what I've seen, this one nails that sense of helplessness. If you're into slow burn horror that plays on your nerves, this game is going to deliver. It's got that same energy as titles like Amnesia or Soma, where the fear builds from what you don't see as much as what you do. Every noise feels like a threat, every shadow could be hiding something, and every second counts as you try to figure out what the hell is going on. The storm isn't just window dressing, it's part of the experience. You'll be dodging falling debris, fighting against strong winds, and trying not to get swept away while figuring out how to stay alive. It adds this layer of chaos to the whole thing, making it feel like the environment itself is working against you. This isn't going to be the kind of game that holds your hand. You'll probably feel lost, confused, and scared, and that's exactly what makes it exciting. If you're down for something that leans heavily into atmosphere and tension without throwing mindless enemies at you, Still Wakes the Deep is shaping up to be a wild, nerve-wracking ride. Absolver. Absolver is one of those games that feels like a hidden gem. If you give it a chance, it'll surprise you. It's part martial arts brawler, part online RPG, and it does things its own way. There's no overwhelming quest log, no massive open world filled with checklists. Instead, it focuses on combat, pure, hand-to-hand tactical fighting, and it's incredibly satisfying once you figure it out. The combat system is the heart of the game, and it's unlike anything else. It's all about learning martial arts moves, creating your own personalized combat deck, and mastering the timing and flow of fights. Every punch, kick, and block feels deliberate. You can't just mash buttons and hope for the best. It's got that dance-like rhythm, where you're reading your opponent's movements, dodging at the last second, and slipping in a counter when they least expect it. If you've ever loved the combat in Sekiro or For Honor, this will hit the same notes, but with its own twist. What's really cool is that Absolver doesn't just teach you moves, you have to learn them by fighting opponents who already know them. Get hit with a certain move enough times and it becomes unlocked for you. It's such a neat way to make progression feel personal, like every fight leaves you a little bit smarter and stronger. The world of Absolver is mysterious and minimalist. It's not about handing you a clear story, it drops you into a strange land with ruins scattered everywhere, and you kind of piece things together as you go. The vibe is really meditative, with quiet, scenic areas that make the fights feel more meaningful when they happen. It's almost like a blend of a martial arts movie and a dreamscape surreal, but in a way that pulls you in. Atomic Heart. Atomic Heart is a strange, bold, and chaotic ride that feels like a love letter to old school shooters. Imagine Bioshock mixed with Soviet-era surrealism, but on some kind of psychedelic trip. It throws you into an alternate 1950s Soviet Union where things have gone very wrong and killer robots, mutants, and weird science experiments are running loose. You play as P3, a gruff, no-nonsense soldier, sent to figure out what the hell happened at a once utopian research facility that's now in complete meltdown, and trust me, nothing makes sense and it's glorious. The game goes hard on style. The environments are filled with retro-futuristic machinery, Soviet propaganda, and bizarre science tech. 1 minute, you're in a pristine research lab filled with weird robot mannequins, and the next, you're crawling through rusted industrial tunnels where everything's trying to kill you. It's unsettling but beautiful, making exploration feel both tense and rewarding. You never really know what's waiting around the next corner, and that keeps things interesting. Combat is a blast. You've got guns, melee weapons, and some freaky special abilities like electrifying enemies or freezing them in place, but the real magic is in how you mix and match everything. Swapping between weapons and powers mid-fight feels fluid, and the game wants you to experiment. Running out of ammo? No problem, grab a pipe and bash a robot's head in. Need a quick escape? Freeze an enemy, then shatter them with a shotgun blast. Every encounter feels dynamic, forcing you to adapt on the fly. The enemies? Freaky as hell. You've got agile humanoid robots, creepy surveillance drones, and grotesque bio-mutants, all of which make you feel like nothing in this world should exist. Some fights feel chaotic with enemies coming at you from all angles, while others are slower and more tactical, requiring you to really pay attention to how you're managing your resources. And the bosses? Yeah, they don't mess around. Each one is a weird spectacle, both visually and mechanically. If you like shooters with a weird edge, something that takes risks, even if it doesn't always hit perfectly, Atomic Heart is absolutely worth your time. It's got that what the hell is happening vibe throughout, and even when it stumbles, it does so in interesting ways. Dive in with an open mind, and you're in for one wild, unforgettable ride. RoboCop Rogue City. RoboCop Rogue City hits that sweet spot where nostalgia meets modern gameplay. If you've ever wondered what it would feel like to step into the heavy boots of Alex Murphy aka RoboCop, this game makes it happen. It's a gritty, first-person shooter that stays true to the brutal tone of the original RoboCop films, complete with all the deadpan one-liners, heavy gunfights, and over-the-top violence you'd expect. But instead of just riding the nostalgia train, it adds depth with exploration, dialogue choices, and some surprisingly engaging moments. The combat feels exactly how you'd imagine being RoboCop would. You're slow, deliberate, and unstoppable. Every shot you fire feels heavy, and enemies don't just drop, they explode. You've got the Auto 9, RoboCop's signature handgun, which can blast holes through walls and send criminals flying. It's not just about running and gunning, though. You can scan environments for hidden details, hack into systems, or even punch your way through obstacles when diplomacy isn't cutting it. There's a satisfaction to every shot and every movement that really sells the feeling of being this indestructible, law-enforcing machine. One thing the game nails is the world of old Detroit. It's a grimy, crime-infested city that feels like a dystopian mess straight out of the original movies. The levels are more than just arenas for combat. They're filled with side objectives, moral choices, and encounters with people who need help or need to be arrested. You can go full on cop mode, arresting criminals and helping civilians, or you can just not care and deal with everything by brute force. The game doesn't judge you either way, which adds a nice touch of freedom to how you play.
The brave men and women of the OCP police force go out and fight to keep us safe.
And let's talk about the dialogue system. It's not just there for show what you say can change how the story unfolds. It's a bit of a surprise, honestly. You expect a RoboCop game to just be non-stop action, but there are moments where you're interrogating suspects or dealing with shady corporations, which adds some layers to the experience. Murphy's stoic delivery makes every interaction both awkward and hilarious. You're basically a walking tank trying to have normal conversations with scared civilians, and it works better than you'd think. The game's pace is slower, but it fits RoboCop's style perfectly. This isn't a fast-paced run and gun shooter. It's about carefully picking your shots, managing threats, and deciding when to take action. There's a real weight to every decision, whether it's in combat or dialogue, and that makes the whole experience feel a bit deeper than you'd expect from a game about a half-man, half-machine cop. If you're a fan of the old RoboCop movies, Rogue City is basically a dream come true. But even if you're coming in fresh, it offers a satisfying blend of shooter mechanics, exploration, and choice-driven storytelling that's hard to put down. It's not perfect, the pacing can feel slow at times, and the humor is very much in that dry 80s action movie style, but if you lean into it, there's a lot of fun to be had here. Stray. The feeling of being a cat. You can do all the cat things: knock over bottles, scratch couches, nuzzle up to robots, and curl up in little nooks for a nap. It's those small touches that make the experience feel so real. The movement is fluid and natural. You'll leap from ledge to ledge, walk along precarious beams, and occasionally get into trouble because, of course, there's no rush. And that's what makes it great. It's a game that invites you to slow down, explore, and just be curious. The world is stunning. This isn't just any cyberpunk city, it's dense, layered, and filled with personality. The streets are cluttered with junk, flickering neon signs, and little details that tell stories without saying a word. There are robots living out routines, some melancholic, others hopeful, and the whole place feels both alive and abandoned at the same time. The game encourages you to explore every corner, rewarding curiosity with little discoveries and hidden areas. There's some light puzzle solving and stealth sprinkled throughout, but nothing too difficult. The puzzles are intuitive and make good use of the environment. You might have to knock over objects to create paths or lure enemies into traps. There are also moments where you need to sneak past these creepy creatures called Zerks, but the game never feels punishing. It's more about immersing you in the experience than throwing difficult challenges your way. Stray isn't a long game, it's the kind of thing you can finish in a few sessions, but that's part of its charm. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and when the credits roll, you'll probably find yourself missing that little cat and its robot friend. It's not about flashy mechanics or complicated systems, it's about creating a unique experience that sticks with you. If you're looking for something different, something quiet, thoughtful, and filled with charm, Stray is definitely worth playing. It's one of those games that stays with you long after you finish it, not because of how hard it was or how much content it had, but because it's just really special. Chants of Sennaar. Chants of Sennaar is one of those games that sneaks up on you at first. It feels like a beautifully crafted puzzle game, but the deeper you go, the more it turns into something profound. It's all about communication, language, and finding meaning in a world that feels both ancient and otherworldly. The entire experience revolves around deciphering languages from different cultures, and if you're the kind of player who loves uncovering mysteries through exploration and logic, this game will hook you. You start off in this mysterious tower divided into different sections, each inhabited by unique civilizations that don't speak the same language. Your task is to learn their words, figure out their customs, and ultimately bring these communities together. But there are no handy translations or hints. This is a game about paying attention, observing patterns, and piecing everything together yourself. It's not just about solving puzzles, it's about understanding people. What's so cool is that the game never spoon feeds you anything. You have to figure out the meaning of symbols and words through context, kind of like how you learn a real language. You might see a symbol used on a sign, then hear a character say it in conversation, and little by little it starts to click. And when you finally crack the code and understand what's being said, it's incredibly satisfying. The art style is gorgeous, clean, colorful, and full of personality. Each area of the tower has its own vibe, with different architectural styles and color palettes that reflect the people living there. The whole thing feels like a storybook come to life, with a sense of mystery that keeps pulling you forward. There's a meditative rhythm to Chants of Sennaar. You're not rushing from one puzzle to the next. It's all about slowing down, soaking in the world, and paying attention to the little details. You're encouraged to explore, talk to NPCs, and jot down notes as you go. The process of learning each language feels organic, and by the time you understand what's happening around you, you'll feel like you've uncovered something meaningful, not just beaten the game. It's not a long game, but it leaves a lasting impression. There are moments of quiet reflection and some subtle narrative beats that hit harder than you'd expect. The whole experience feels like a reminder of the power of language and understanding, and how easily we can be divided when we don't take the time to listen. If you're in the mood for something thoughtful, relaxing, and a bit different from the usual action-packed fare, Chants of Sennaar is absolutely worth your time. It's the kind of game that doesn't just challenge your brain, it makes you think about how we communicate, how we connect, and what it really means to understand each other. Dave the Diver. Dave the Diver is one of those games that makes you think, wait, how does this even work? And then it just does. It's a weird but delightful blend of underwater exploration, sushi restaurant management, and mini-games, and somehow it all clicks. You play as Dave, a regular guy who finds himself juggling two very different lives, diving into the deep blue to catch exotic fish by day and running a bustling sushi restaurant by night. It sounds chaotic, but trust me, it's the kind of chaos you'll love. The diving sections are super chill at first. You swim through beautiful underwater environments, catching fish, finding treasure, and discovering strange sea creatures, but things start to get tricky the deeper you go. Oxygen becomes limited, stronger creatures appear, and you'll need to upgrade your equipment if you want to make it back in one piece. There's something oddly relaxing about the diving, even when the game throws a giant shark or some deep sea nightmare your way. Then, there's the restaurant side of things, which is surprisingly addictive. You'll work with your chef, Bancho, to create the perfect menu using the fish you've caught. And it's not just about serving food, it's about timing and efficiency. You're pouring tea, taking orders, and plating sushi while trying to keep customers happy. It's frantic, but in a way that feels rewarding when you pull off a smooth night. The game also has a quirky, lighthearted story running through it, filled with charming characters and weird little side plots. One minute you're learning about rare sea creatures, the next you're helping a musician compose a song. It's got that offbeat humor that keeps things fresh, never taking itself too seriously, but still managing to be genuinely engaging. The mix of mechanics keeps you on your toes. One day you're upgrading your harpoon and planning a deep dive to catch rare fish. The next you're learning new recipes, decorating the restaurant, or managing staff. There are also mini-games sprinkled throughout, like boss fights against giant sea creatures or treasure hunts that break up the rhythm in just the right way. What makes Dave the Diver stand out is that it never feels overwhelming, even with all the moving parts. It has that perfect balance of laid-back fun and light challenge. You can dive for hours, experiment with sushi menus, or just chill out and enjoy the goofy story at your own pace. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is like a love letter to the days when video games just wanted to be cool as hell. If you ever played Jet Set Radio or loved the vibe of skating games mixed with killer music and rebellious energy, this one will hit hard. It's all about cruising through futuristic city streets, tagging graffiti, pulling off tricks, and dodging cops, basically making your mark on the world in style. And yeah, it looks as good as it sounds. The first thing that stands out is the vibe. This game oozes style from every corner. The visuals are this crisp, cel-shaded dream, full of neon lights and graffiti-covered walls. It's got that funky, urban look that makes every part of the city feel alive. Every time you skate through a new area, it's like stepping into a music video. And the soundtrack insane. Funk, hip-hop, jazz, electronic beats, it's all mixed perfectly, creating that groove that makes you want to move through the city non-stop. The gameplay nails that old school skating game feel while adding some new tricks to keep it fresh. You've got a mix of skating, grinding, flipping, and even parkour, so getting around feels fluid and fast. You're encouraged to chain tricks together, not just to score points but to build momentum, because nothing feels better than cruising at top speed while pulling off wild tricks mid-air. It's all about flow, and when it clicks, damn, it feels good. Tagging graffiti is where things get interesting. You're not just skating for fun, you're building your crew's rep by leaving your mark on the city. The graffiti system is simple, but it feels satisfying every time you slap a tag on a wall, billboard, or train. The game makes it personal by letting you switch between different styles and create combos of tags as part of your runs. It's like you're not just playing the game, you're painting the city with your own rhythm. And of course it wouldn't be complete without the cops breathing down your neck. As you rack up points and start dominating areas, the heat turns up and the police come after you. It's not about brute force, they chase you down with drones and mechs, forcing you to outmaneuver them with your skills. Escaping a police raid feels like a mini game in itself, and pulling it off makes you feel unstoppable. The best thing about Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, it knows exactly what it wants to be. It's not trying to be some massive open world epic, it's about pure fun. Skating, tagging, vibing to music, and making a mess of the city in the most stylish way possible. No fluff, just that core experience of speed, tricks, and self-expression. If you've missed that type of game, the kind that's all about movement, music, and just feeling cool, this one's for you. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is here to remind you that sometimes all you need is a good beat, some smooth tricks, and a city to leave your mark on. Before your eyes.
It's Chloe.
Before Your Eyes isn't just a game, it's an experience that sticks with you long after it ends. It takes a concept so simple, controlling the game by blinking, and turns it into one of the most emotional journeys you'll ever play. You're not just playing through a character's life, you're living their memories, seeing their highs and lows, and whether you're ready or not, moving forward with every blink. The whole premise is brilliant. You're placed in the shoes of Benjamin Bran, reliving the story of his life through memories, guided by a mysterious ferryman. The catch: every time you blink, time skips forward. Sometimes it's a few minutes, sometimes it's years, and that's where the magic and the heartbreak happens. Moments you wish could last forever slip away with a blink, and it's impossible to hold on to everything. It hits hard because just like real life, you can't stop time from moving on. What's crazy is how well the blinking mechanic works. You don't just use it to advance the story, it becomes part of the experience. You might be looking at a meaningful moment, wanting to hold on to it a little longer, but your eyes betray you, and suddenly you're somewhere else wondering what you missed. It creates a sense of nostalgia and regret that feels way too real, and it makes the story feel personal. You're not just watching Ben's memories, you're in them. Visually, the game is simple but effective. The art style feels soft and dreamlike, perfectly fitting the idea of reliving someone's memories. And the music, it pulls everything together, adding just the right amount of emotion to every scene without ever feeling overbearing.
Love it.
No matter how much you like it,
Before Your Eyes isn't a long game, you can finish it in about 90 minutes, but it makes every second count. It's the kind of experience that makes you think about your own life, the moments that slip by, and the memories you wish you could revisit. It's not just about the story it tells, it's about how it makes you feel, and that's what makes it so special. If you're looking for something unique, meaningful, and unforgettable, Before Your Eyes is a must-play. Just be prepared, it's going to hit you right in the feels. And yeah, you might cry, but that's kind of the point.
that's just how this thing works.
Cuphead. Cuphead isn't just a game, it's an experience that punches you right in the nostalgia and then challenges you to stay on your toes. This one's not for the faint of heart, but if you love a tough as nails challenge wrapped in some of the most beautiful, hand-drawn animation ever, you're in for a treat. It's like stepping into a 1930s cartoon, complete with jazz music, surreal characters, and that old-school charm, but don't let the cute art style fool you. Cuphead will test your patience and reflexes in ways you won't forget. The gameplay is all about precision. It's a run-and-gun shooter at its core, with platforming sections thrown in between relentless boss fights. And those bosses? Oh man, they're the heart of the game. Each one feels like a unique event with crazy transformations, weird phases, and bullet hell patterns you need to master. 1 second, you're fighting a giant carrot, and the next you're dodging attacks from a transforming airplane or an evil clown riding a roller coaster. It's chaotic, and figuring out each boss's pattern is like solving a frustratingly fun puzzle. The controls are buttery smooth. Jumping, dashing, parrying, and firing off attacks all feel tight. Every mistake you make feels like your fault, which is both motivating and infuriating in the best way. Bet you'll die. A lot. But the sense of satisfaction when you finally land that perfect dodge or beat a boss that's been driving you crazy is worth every second of frustration. What really makes Cuphead stand out though is the art and music. The whole game is hand-drawn in that old school cartoon style, and it looks incredible. Every frame is filled with life and detail, from the way characters bounce to the expressive animations in every boss fight. The soundtrack is pure jazz goodness, with energetic big band tunes that perfectly match the chaotic rhythm of the game. It's the kind of game where you almost want to lose just to hear the music a little longer. There's a lot of satisfaction in Cuphead's simplicity. It doesn't drown you in complex mechanics or unnecessary fluff. It just gives you tough fights, precise controls, and a beautiful world to conquer. It's hard, yes, but never unfair. The game respects your skill, and when you finally pull off a win, it feels earned. If you're into games that demand patience, precision, and perseverance, and you appreciate some killer art and music along the way, Cuphead is absolutely worth the ride. Just be prepared to get your butt kicked. A lot. Well everyone, that was all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now please make sure to leave a like, and also tell me what more games would you suggest. Now I will see you later. Have a good day.
Can I get a pizza over here?
Okay,
Okay.
don't be tired.
That make you happy?